Hello and welcome to Breaking Bread with Rivaj Maharaj, where nothing is off the table. For today's episode, I wanted to talk about South Africa and, more importantly, the genocide case that the South African government brought against Israel. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Now, from the title of this video, you would have ascertained that I want to talk about South Africa and the genocide claim that it brought against Israel, that it claimed Israel is perpetuating against the people of Gaza or the Palestinians. So let me say at the outset, I'm not here to give you my personal opinion on whether I think it's justified or not. The purpose of this video is because I want to highlight something that I think is important, and I think people should take note of this. And that is that while it may seem incredibly noble that South Africa seems to be championing the cause of the Palestinians, and while South Africa seems to be the country that is best suited to decide on what is and what isn't an apartheid regime given our history, let's look a little deeper at the current situation within South Africa. So, a little background here. I'm formerly South African. I now live in the UK, but I lived through apartheid. Let's make no bones of it. Apartheid was an incredibly brutal system. It discriminated. As much as our families tried to shield us from it, we all felt it in some way or another, some more than others. But apartheid, nonetheless, was absolutely brutal. It was dehumanizing, and it was something that should not have been allowed to have occurred. Now, having said that, I can also tell you that I saw the end of apartheid and I saw what came after it. And bear in mind, we all played our part in this, what we call the armed struggle, in some way. No matter whether it was big or small, we all played a part in it. We all have family members, friends, members of our friends' families that actively were involved in the armed struggle, that were part of the ANC, part of the Natal Indian Congress, part of COSATU, part of the South African Communist Party, the Tripartite Alliance, people who gave their lives for this struggle. And I'll tell you now, they have sorely been let down. As a South African living abroad, when I look at what my country has become, it's shameful. I think the ANC government needs to sit down, take a long, hard look at what it has done, and understand that those days of blaming the apartheid regime are now over. It's years since you've been running the country. What have you done? What have you done for the country? Your crime rates are disastrous. Poverty, everything is a disaster.
Well, I can tell you that the details in regards to this cash and transit heist are very sketchy at the current moment, but we're now at a second location. And so we understand that initially in the morning, a vehicle involving an unconfirmed number of people essentially pounced on this cash and transit heist on Elias Motsoaledi Road in Roodepoort. An undisclosed amount of money was then taken. Some of those involved opened fire on the vehicle, breached the vehicle, taking with it an amount of money that police are yet to confirm at the moment.
There's no electricity. Now, this brings me to the point that the South African government has gone and spent a lot of money on this genocide case. They've gone and made a big hoo-ha about it. But they want to go and preach to the world about safety and security and the importance of life, when I can tell you that within South Africa, crime is running rampant. So What I'm basically saying is before you choose to sweep somebody else's yard, before you choose to lecture to other people, make sure that you have at least somewhat of a clean slate. And trust me, the slate from which South Africa is preaching, the pulpit from which they're preaching, it is far from clean. We've all got families that have been victim of violent crime, murders, hijackings, robberies. It just never ends. It keeps getting worse. I'm going to tell you a story. It's probably about 20 odd years ago. When I was still in South Africa, I remember working at this place in KwaZulu-Natal in Durban, and I saw this young Zulu boy, a teenager, washing vehicles. And I asked him, I said, why aren't you in school? Why are you doing this? And bear in mind, apartheid had been over. Nelson Mandela had come. It was now Thabo Mbeki who was in. And this youngster looked at me and he said, I can't afford to go to school. I have to work. I have to help support my family. And then he said something to me that was incredibly startling, something that really shocked me to the core because I never expected to hear it. And he said, life under apartheid was a lot better than the life he was living at that point in time. And it was like a blow to the gut. I felt sick because I thought we all wanted this freedom, we wanted this equality, we wanted this vote, so that everybody could share in that dream. And to find that this youngster was now saying to me, he would rather have gone back to the brutality of that system. It was gut-wrenching. And I asked him, I said, why would you say such a thing? And he said to me, look at me, look at my life. He said, I leave my home in the township, I lock my door, I go back, somebody's broken in, they've stolen my stuff. He said he's have family members that have been murdered, family members that have been raped. It's just, he said, I don't want this life for myself, but I'm forced into it. He said, my other option is to go out and become a criminal. So I'd rather wash cars just so I could have food on the table. And, it was really, really shocking. So if you ask me, did the government let the people down? Of course they did. The corruption in South Africa is insane.
Madlanga Commission reveals identity of feared and dangerous figure. We'll tell you who it is. Whether he likes it or not, Brown Mokgotsi is likely to be forced to appear before Parliament. How can an SANDF officer charged with murder, kidnapping and conspiracy rise to head special forces?
All these people that sat in prison on behalf of the freedom struggle, I think when they came out, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them saw an opportunity. The gravy train is running. Let's become a part of it. Let's line our pockets now. And this is at the expense of the people. I'll read out some statistics. So just an overview. You do a Google search on serious crime statistics in South Africa. Just an overview. South Africa faces extremely high rates of violent crime, including one of the world's highest murder rates at 45 per 100,000 in 2023 to 2024. These are all that have been reported, totaling over 63 murders daily. While some crime categories show slight declines in 2025-2026, armed robberies, kidnappings, and sexual offences remain high, with violent crime impacting the economy by 15% of GDP. Key serious crime statistics based on 2024-2025 data. Murder. The murder rate reached 45 per 100,000 in 2023-2024, a significant increase from 36 in 2018 to 2019. although the first half of 2025-2026 showed a slight decrease, over 11,500 murders were still recorded. Sexual offences. Reports indicate a sharp, concerning rise, with instances increasing to 73,000 cases in 2024 to 2025. Violent property crime. Carjackings and residential robberies remain high. In 2024-2025, carjacking saw a slight increase, and around 983,000 households were victims of housebreaking in the past year. Commercial crime increased by 4.7% in 2024 to 2025, the fourth quarter, particularly in Gauteng and the Western Cape.
This type of incident is very common in South Africa, where gangs often use explosives to blast open armored cash vans.
You know, there's a lot more statistics here. I could go on, but it's incredible that while the country is battling with all this, rather than dedicating its resources to help better the lives for its own people, it's prepared to now go out and champion somebody else's cause. I don't have a problem with that. But if the foundations in your home are rotten, what gives you the right to then go and stand and preach to the world on how to build their own homes? It just doesn't make sense. There's no accountability. You know, Cyril Ramaphosa needs to sit up and take stock. He needs to take accountability and say, listen, we failed you, but this is what we're going to do. Rather than allowing the thieving and corruption and crime to escalate to these insane levels. Let's have a look at the percentage of poverty in South Africa. As of early 2026, poverty in South Africa shows a complex trend, with recent stats SA data showing a long-term decline in absolute poverty from 2006 to 2023. However, projections indicate that around 63.5% of the population still lives in poverty based on upper middle income lines, while other analysis suggests roughly 37.9% to 55% remain below various poverty thresholds, influenced by high unemployment and inequality. Now, you know, the thing that annoys me is that you've always blaming the governments that came before you. The ANC has been in power since apartheid has come to an end. You know, at some point you need to stop blaming other people and look at yourself. Take stock. This is unacceptable. You know, a country that was once, you know, the leader in Africa, you're slowly reducing the country to nothing. You know, you're going to become a joke on the world stage. You know, there's the country continuously has blackouts. You know, electricity is a problem. And again, you'll blame everybody else but the current regime. It's time it should be sorted out. How do you expect to attract foreign investment into a country that cannot keep the lights on? You know, the other day there was a military drill in South Africa with the South Africans, the Russians, I think the Chinese, and the Iranians participating. Apparently, Cyril Ramaphosa had asked the generals to ask the Iranians not to participate in the drill. They still went ahead anyway. Now, irrespective of what you may think of the matter, look at the implications of it. The commander-in-chief, the president of the country, has asked the military to do a specific thing, and the military has done the opposite. What does it say? What does it say? If you listen to that general from the South African Defence Force, the speech he gave, where he said the South African Defence Forces, I think he said something about not being a Mickey Mouse. I may misquote, but I'll try and find the clip and put it in.
South African National Defence Forces Lieutenant General Nchaveni Mapaha has strongly criticised the government and politicians for failing to secure South Africa's borders, describing them as porous and unprotected. He also accused government of reducing the country's defense force to, quote, a Mickey Mouse defense force. His remarks come after the deaths of 14 South African soldiers in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
What I'm going to say here, I may be trampling on some cones, so please pardon me, Premier, and the parliamentarians that are here. All of you know that South Africa, in its position in the world, we are a global player. In Africa, we are the leader in terms of economics and geopolitics, and therefore we are considered a big brother. No, you cannot be a big brother if you are unable to wield a stick that will make people be afraid. Now, you may be asking yourself, what is he talking about and all that? How many of you will build a beautiful and expensive house and not fence it and protect it? I don't think none of you will do that. Constitutionally, the South African National Defence Force is mandated to protect and defend the country. Now, any home will display its character, its worthiness, by the level of security that it places around it. Now, if we're going to play big brother in Africa, and therefore what we give for the Defence Force should symbolize that. A lot has been said about the South African National Defence Force not being well equipped, not being resourced and all that. I'm not going to get into that, but I'm saying, and I'm appealing to the politicians that are here, that next time you sit down and debate, think whether you are protected or not. Because that grant that you're giving to the people out there, the education of your children and everything else will not materialize if you're not protected. I'm sure many of you know that we are sharing our grants for the poor with people who are not supposed to share the grants. And that is because we are not protected. Our borders are porous. And they're porous because you, the politicians, have decided you want a Mickey Mouse Defense Force. I'm sorry to say that. And by the way, the Adjutant General is here. I'm protected. I'm not making a political speech, by the way.
But essentially, we've never had a coup in South Africa. But when the generals in the military start speaking like that, when they feel free to be able to challenge their own government in public, Africa is a continent rife with coups. Military coups are not foreign to Africa. So if I was Cyril Ramaphosa, I would really be watching my back right now. Also, it helps the government to keep people in abject poverty, to keep people uneducated, because it then gives you a reason to blame somebody else. If they're uneducated, it gives you a reason to tell them, you see the guy that was there before us, they were the ones that messed the country up, and we're still doing something, we're trying to do something about it. Giving somebody a bag of milli-meal and a bottle of oil just before elections and asking them to put a vote next to you, that's dirty politics, man. Stand up for something that you were prepared to lay down your life for at one point. Where did it all go wrong? The Cyril Ramaphosas, the Thabo Mbekis, they all went, they went to prison or they were in exile because they believed in a cause. At what point did that cause get hijacked for personal gain? At what point did you realize that, hang on, I don't give a damn about the people. I only care about myself. At what point? Because I think it's a question that needs to be answered, and I think you owe it to the South African public, to the South African populace, to explain to them why. It's because of you. Not any foreign power, not anybody else, but you, that the people are still where they were when you took over, or if not worse off. So for want of a better word, pull your finger out and start doing something constructive for the people and the country. Stop running it like a joke. So the next time the South African government decides to take on the Israelis or anybody else for that matter, where they feel some genocide is being committed and they feel that they need to be, the knight in shining armor riding in on the white horse, Put those thoughts aside. Put those thoughts aside. Get your own house in order before you decide to go out and preach to the world. Because right now, from where I'm standing, you are in no position to lecture to anybody in the world about what is right and wrong when your country is descending into a bottomless pit of madness. Corruption, thievery, violent crime. It's insane. You worry about the lives of people in a foreign land, yet you can't care about the people that you swore to uphold and protect. That is disgusting. Take a good damn look in the mirror. Look at where you started and where you've come to. Look at what you've done to your own people, the South Africans. And then decide, do I have a moral leg to stand on and preach to the world about right and wrong when I can't even do any justice for my people in my own country? Thank you for spending time with us on this monologue, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, as it helps us with the algorithm and it helps the channel to grow.